I particularly very grateful to CEWARN team, Kalmas and Tigis, for giving us the opportunity to read the book, which I did. I will first start by anecdote. When you read a book like this, it takes you back in time. I was doing my PhD in international politics on Organization of African Union at the time when the OAU was being passed out, and I was dealing with conflicts in Africa. And so anybody who worked in IGAD at that particular time or in African Union, I know him or her personally because I had to go to every office. Fortunately today, they move on in their life, they become so important that I cannot even see them. Except that if I go to UN, because quite a number of them went to UN, some remain with AU, but quite a number of them retired. What I am interested in, anecdote I want to put is, when I read this book, it is written by practitioners. The format is designed in form of interview, so it was very easy for them to talk from their heart what they knew. And I would assume it was a long interview, and like good academician would do, they would edit to fit with the framework that they were doing. So this is the format of the book. These were interviews of people who were part of CEWARN. So when I finished reading the book, a very important question came to my mind in context of South Sudan. And it is very interesting that majority of the people who are dealing with peace now in South Sudan are not South Sudanese because of the nature of the agreement itself, so different. And then I asked myself, then why is it that these people are not succeeding in implementing peace agreement, having seen the early warning system that we have dealt with? One thing came to my mind. I was speaking to a diplomat quite a while back. I said, it seems that the approach that we are using to persuade the leaders of South Sudan is not the right approach. 3 words you must probably tell to your colleagues, and I am telling you now. One of them is character of the leader. Number 2 is the subjective personality of the leader. And number 4, the pressing egos of the leaders. In conflict analysis of any sort, you can do anything you want. You can read this book. It's full of all the indicators that you can use. But these 3 things are the problem in South Sudan. People don't know who are the leaders of South Sudan. They are just assuming them. People don't know the subjective personality of South Sudanese leaders. And people do not know the egos of South Sudan. It came to my mind that maybe all these indicators are good, but maybe some of the people who are dealing with peace must ask themselves this question. Do you really know these 3 things about us, me included? This book, in my view, is about an organization which was born in a very interesting time. The period between 1993 to 2002 was very interesting because the OAU was declared dead, so there was need for a new organization. And the central point of political transition was now moved into conflict because the region, the continent was at war. And so one of the units that were created in 2002 by IGAD, which was not meant really for security, it was for disaster, for drought, and for other issues, deforestation, was early warning. And those, when you read the book, CEWARN was born at the time when the world were witnessing things that were not conventional. Extremism was a serious problem. Criminal groups that were emerging out and of course, border conflicts. Some used to be inter-state, but some of them became inter-state. And then you have sophisticated weapons that were brought. Traditionally, in East Africa and the Horn, they used those traditional guns, but by 90s, the situation really has changed very, very much. So this book, therefore, in my view, was a testimony that any idea which is good, supported by the right people, can be transformed into a viable institution through a dedicated team, which is, in this case, was highly motivated. Otherwise, for 20 years, they wouldn't reach where they have reached. But equally, the book seemed to suggest, in my view, that very few security networks do prioritize certificate of early warning. Most states, and you can find this in any country, they really feel that if you have good national security, both external and internal, it's enough for you to deal with getting the right information. Of course, the example of Africa is that that's wrong. In the 90s, the West Africa, almost 5 countries went to war. In Southern Africa, all of you know Mozambique, Angola, and the rest. And I not mention my own country, Sudan then, and Eritrea and Ethiopia and so on. So relying on traditional national security organs or intelligence organs has proven not to be, it's not good. Because yes, they use the same tool, collect the information, analyze them, give them the decision makers. But I don't think it's a good move. So this is one of the things that you figure out in the book, that this is a new model. It's a new thing of doing it. But CEWARN, of course, what struck me when I read the book was that it is a data-driven warning algorithm, because it's deal with observers and partners on the ground, but also it has this character of rapid response. What does this mean in practical purpose? For practical purpose, it means that you move away from this elite approach to conflict management, which is the 3: conflict prevention, management, and resolution. You now move to deal with the actors as they are and make them part of the resolution. I think that in itself is very, very important. But of course, another thing that the book really seemed to have brought out very clearly is the idea that you can't do with one level only. National, you come to local level, and then to regional or continental level. And of course, then you link it up across. So if it is a local, it is regional, then it must be continental, and it must be international. I find that to be very interesting. But CEWARN, another observation which I got, which was very interesting, it emerged out of a very wrong time in the history of the Horn of Africa, really, and East Africa. Because at that particular time, Sudan was at war, big war within itself. Eritrea and Ethiopia were in the peak of the conflict. Eritrea just emerged out as a state. And then Djibouti was emerging out of internal strife. And then, of course, Somalia was almost already in a full disintegration mood. And then you have Kenya moving from one-party system to multi-party system, and then it created its own dynamics up to almost mid of 2000s. That period meant that the intra and inter-state conflicts, which were in the heydays of the OAU and the AU up to today, became intertwined. So local conflicts can create national conflicts, and inter-state conflict can do that. So that meant that CEWARN now have to come up was completely new model. It is a data collected model. It has actually 47 diverse variables, as you find about, and these 47 variables mean you can just pick them like this, feed them to any country. You may get in one country maybe 8, or in one local case like cattle raiders or a famine environment or disaster environment, you can feed them. In other words, it's more scientific than traditional intelligence gathering system. And I found this to be very, very, very interesting. Another thing that I come to realize is the model that they use in how they collect the information. And already you have seen through committees and that. But what strikes me, this book, when you read it in detail, how individual peace monitors and peace committees deal with the issues, you'll get fascinated, because they deal with almost everything. Issues of governance, issues of cattle raiding, they deal with issues of gender, issues of rape. These things are done at that local level in cooperation with the state institutions. So already you have people participating to deal with their issues, and they then own the government. Another observation which I got, and I don't want to bore you with all this, is how institutions develop. You see, CEWARN was born out of pastoralist conflict model, particularly issues of water, pasture, issues of famine, issues of drought, issues. People fight over resources. Today, it has moved from that to completely a different mode. For example, Somalia. People used to deal with issues of cattle raiding and so on. In Somalia today, you have Shabab. It's a very serious issues of state building. But when they started completely something different. In South Sudan, when we started the war, it was Northern Sudanese, my brother is one of them. We thought that these people were the number one enemy, and we fought them for almost 60 years for the right reasons. We have all the books we have written over that issue. So human being complexity can change in 3 models. It can change itself, it can change the cause for which it's fight, and it can change institutions. And this is where I see CEWARN to be unique, in the sense that you started from pastoralist issues of camel. Somebody, in the case of Djibouti, you are raiding camels, and then you ended up. So whether you are talking about Karmoja or Somalia or Digel clusters, with time they move on. The issues move on, and the people, they move on. Of course, the first question that one would ask, what are the strengths of CEWARN? I think there are mainly 2, and this you find them in the book. One of them is that each CEWARN is present in each state member of IGAD. Physically, it's there. The other reason is that the solutions that are derived and that are looked after, you found them and are located among the people who has the most risk of the time. So you don't have to look for people in Addis Ababa or Juba or in Khartoum or in Nairobi. You physically find the solution among people. I think these 2 things made it a little bit unique compared to other models. I also wanted to give about 4 examples, then I will end there. One key secret that made CEWARN successful early on is the fact that it shows to go to country at the beginning, to countries that are open towards the initiative. So they didn't do it like Coca-Cola, as you were saying, Ambassador. It was not applied to everybody. But the moment the country is ready to go in, then they made it. Also, the entry points were identified. And of course, some countries that felt skeptical about it, because some countries will say, you are creating spies in our countries. Because, Africans are very strange. You want to help them, they tell you, they give you other stories, and they ended up in crisis. So, but eventually, when they realized this, it worked. Another thing that I realized is that there seemed to be, there was commitment from partners, particularly US, some Scandinavian countries, EU, to fund this. If this was not there, this project would have not worked. One of the big problems that we are facing as leaders, and this is Kalma's understanding of how the future of CEWARN will look like, is that for any early warning, and now in South Sudan, we have a period, very difficult period, where the envoys and others should really take it very serious. The current early warning system required in South Sudan is that credibility and sufficient information, because we are ruled by rumors in South Sudan. And somebody ruled by rumors is somebody who is feared, Zulkhaif, somebody who is afraid. Rumors will control you. Now, how do you do that? You address the fear of that person. So you cannot go ask them, these people are your people, they love you, they suffer. No, you don't address them. You tell them, what is your personal problem? You cannot do that if you don't have credible and sufficient information about the fear of that person. The second thing he said, in order for you to succeed in the future of Africa, you must have the capacity and the skill to map and analyze violent conflict risks and respond from complex system perspective. In South Sudan, we have got 4 systems, conflicts. We have transitional leaders, there are many of them. We have a lot of power brokers, there are many of them. We have national leaders, there are many of them. And then we have the foreign friends and partners. These 4 groups, they are dealing with complex system of conflict resolution. We are the most complex, this agreement is the most complex one. So South Sudan should benefit from this future perspective of CEWARN. But also, according to him, there must be ability to serve the appropriate decision makers with risks and contingency assessment in timely fashion. In other words, what had happened 3 days ago, I know many leaders have contacted our leaders, including you who are in this room. The question is, what is the contingency assessment that when you go and sit with them, you tell them? What do you tell them? It is not that your people are going back to war. No, of course, they will go back to war one way or another. But what do you say? Then you say capacity to effectively grow and evolve network, and that network must be in line with the need to prevent violent conflict in order to have successful response. But this can only be supported by on-the-ground projects that reduce risk of violence. In Juba, this is your background. This town is a very complex town. There are 5 zones. We who live in Amarat, I live in Amarat, and then you have the group that live in Tongpei, and then you have group in Jabal and so on. This group, all of them, are highly sophisticated people, including 650 members of parliament. How do you deal with people like that? The on-ground capacity to reduce risk. Another thing I admire is the use of inbuilt learning mechanism. This agreement is coming to an end. One way or another, it has to be reshaped. This time, we have to put inbuilt mechanism in order for us not to repeat the 2013 and 2016. Now, looking back to 2002 and beyond 2050, IGAD and CEWARN will have different mandates. I think you will agree with me on that. And they will have different structures. That will be roughly about 30 years from now, 35 years. But also, the Horn of Africa will not be the same. The region will have grown demographically. Ethiopia will have probably almost approached 200 million, maybe 150. South Sudan maybe will be 25. Kenya probably will be approach 100. So we are going to be in a different formula. Politically, majority of things we are talking about South Sudan will not be there. These issues I'm just telling you. We will be gone by that time or become very old people. So probably will not be active in that time. Economically, the approach will be because oil will not be in use anymore, the world want to get rid of it. So maybe there will be new model. Socially, this issue of dwelling and others maybe will be different because our grandchildren will be dealing with different understanding. They already started, they're marrying themselves, they really don't care about us very much. And so the nature of the conflicts will also change. This will make CEWARN reshape itself. So what does it mean really? It means CEWARN we are dealing with 30 years from now, the issues we are dealing with 30 years from now will not be the same. But in order for these issues not to be the same, we also need to be realistic how we deal with the issues. And one of them is the issue of South Sudan. To me, there is no fear because majority of the leaders who are in charge now, they know themselves very well and they know their people very well. The people who need really to know us very well are our friends who are trying to help us. The moment they know us and they begin to ask the right questions, within short time they will be so surprised. What happened? So after all, we didn't. I'm afraid what I'm saying may not make sense, but I thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.